Newsmax TV's continuing coverage of tonight's Republican presidential debate from Miami, Florida rolls right along. I'm J.D. Hayworth welcoming you back to our coverage. And let me call on my good friend and colleague who you see weeknights here at 7 o'clock Eastern Time on the Steve Malzberg Show. Why, it's Steve Malzberg from Newsmax, New York. Steve, obviously, as well we concentrate on the performance of the four candidates center stage. And yet I am struck and of course we understand how different moderators take over the debates, but I take a look at Jake Tapper, who a term before I got to Congress, I believe was the press secretary for Marjorie Margolis-Mezvinsky. And I think back to when we were kids and there were the titans of broadcasting, the true anchors like Walter Cronkite or David Brinkley, always a presence. Your evaluation, before we get to the candidates, your evaluation of CNN tonight, Jake Tapper, how he moderated, and the other contributors, some of the questions they had to ask.
To be honest with you, I don't think there was, that I saw, a moment where anybody got mad at any of them or said that's not fair or said, why don't you stick, people are interested in the issues, not in that kind of thing. So I thought I thought it was a pretty well-handled debate from a moderator point of view.
The other interesting thing, though, now with only four candidates, the only adjustment I saw was that they gave each candidate very generously a minute 15 seconds to answer and a bit more of a rebuttal. Would it have been better to encapsulate this into 90 minutes rather than, a couple of hours duration?
I'm sure every one of the candidates would have agreed with you on that. But as you know, just as well as I, they stretch it out. They make it an all-day event. And they're not going to let the candidates go at after 90 minutes when they could cut into 2 hours of programming and keep the ratings going. So it is what it is.
And of course, we can scarcely find fault with the fact that in many publications it said the coverage started at 8:30, but that was for CNN's pre-coverage of the actual event that started at 9. And since we kind of engage in the same thing here, truth be told, I won't be critical of that. All right, enough for our colleagues in broadcasting. Let's talk about those who stood on the stage. Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and John Kasich. Steve, your initial impression, who was the winner tonight?
I think because of the fact that nothing major happened. I think because of the fact that he maintained his cool even on the rare occasions when Cruz went after him ever so slightly. I think Donald Trump. Now look, were there stronger candidates on the issues? Absolutely. Am I fed up with Donald Trump saying he's going to make a deal with the Palestinians and the Israelis? I think Cruz and I think that Rubio took him to school on that. But I think overall, Donald Trump did nothing to hurt himself. Donald Trump showed a good temperament, and even when the candidates had a chance to go after him on the guy who beat somebody up, who punched someone at his rally today, and then they quoted things Donald Trump had said, not one of them went after Donald Trump for using the language he uses. So they were using kid gloves on Trump. Trump just was very presidential, almost seemed bored at times. I don't think much changed after tonight.
I believe the term is above the fray is the way that Donald was treating it, but almost cutting into his persona of a guy with snappy answers. At times, he was so low-key, at least to me, it appeared that he was lethargic. Not to criticize him, but just in stark contrast to the guy who was very engaged and would always have the rejoinder. It did appear that he did make that effort to step back a bit, to be a little more dispassionate in what he had to say tonight. Let me call in someone else from Newsmax, New York, conservative activist and writer Julio Rivera, who, for purposes of full disclosure, is firmly in the camp of Ted Cruz. So, Julio, I'm expecting you're going to tell me that Ted was the guy who came through with flying colors tonight.
Yeah, he most certainly did. I mean, Donald Trump came up with the whole, I'm going to eliminate waste and fraud. But if you go on Ted Cruz's website, he actually has a plan to get rid of it. He wants to reinstitute the Grace Commission to eliminate wasteful spending and fraud run by private sector people. He also wants to introduce a balanced budget amendment. So he actually has an idea on how to eliminate wasteful spending and fraud, as opposed to just, coming out with rhetoric saying that he's going to do it. You have to have a path to actually achieve those objectives, and he certainly does.
The other
that's
thing,
very, very true. Yeah.
Go ahead,
I'm
Steve.
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say that's absolutely true. Better prepared, better answers, better policies, understand the issues better. Both Rubio and Cruz, and I guess Kasich to an extent do, although Kasich is way too liberal for me. But having said that, that's the way it's been from day one. People support Trump, not expecting to have a policy wonk as president, not expecting to have a genius who's going to have 7 pages of detailed information on every plan. They want an outsider who says what he thinks, who says what they think, and is unafraid, and is self-funded, and is a businessman, and has not been in Washington. That's what Rubio and Cruz and Kasich cannot match.
It is worth noting, however, and I think there is something to what Julio had to say in terms of his presentation. Cruz offered details, offered the most consistent approach, trying to marry emotion and passion with some definitive plans. But Steve, I hear what you're saying. For years, the lament has been, and you've heard this analysis of our two parties, that the Democratic Party is the mommy party, basing everything on emotion, and the Republican Party is the daddy party, saying, well, we need to be responsible. To this degree, and it'd be interesting, Julio, to get your take on this, even though you're a Cruz supporter, when Donald Trump speaks in a way that people say, he's saying what's on my mind, he takes that emotional essence that has been part and parcel of the Democrat pitch, since the Depression era, and exploits it in a new way. In that way, he has changed politics. Your take on Trump and his emotional connection with so many voters?
Well, listen, the people feel that they've been betrayed by politicians who have ran on one platform and gone to D.C. and done the complete opposite. The fact of the matter is Donald Trump is a great salesman. He knows that people feel that they've been, slighted in the past by the people that they've voted in. A lot of activists that have went out there and, gotten these people elected have gone towards Trump because of this perception that he's saying it like it is and he's an outsider. But the fact of the matter is a lot of these people that have been in D.C., pumping these policies that are hurting the American taxpayers have been funded by Donald Trump. So this perception that he's an outsider, to me, is completely false.
Well, let's turn to
But he admits that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead, sir.
No, I'm sorry. He admits that. He says, I played the game. I know the system better than anybody because I've been playing the system from this end where I buy off politicians and they do what I want. Who admits something like that? Well, that's one of the appeals of him.
In the political biz, that has been called inoculation. There's an example of it from earlier tonight that we'll get to later. But again, as an illustration of just how, for lack of a better term, Trump-centric this campaign has become, it happened again the other night on CNN with Anderson Cooper talking about Islam. The question was asked by Jake Tapper. Let's watch the exchange, Jake Tapper and Donald Trump from earlier this evening.
Mr. Trump, let me start with you. Last night you told CNN, quote, Islam hates us. Did you mean all 1.6 billion Muslims?
I mean a lot of them.
Do you want to clarify the comment at all?
Well, I've been watching the debate today, and they're talking about radical Islamic terrorism or radical Islam. But I will tell you, there's something going on that maybe you don't know about, and maybe a lot of other people don't know about. But there's tremendous hatred, and I will stick with exactly what I said to Anderson Cooper.
So there's Donald Trump doubling down on his emotional statement that a lot of people agreed with. Let's agree now. we'd say on the House floor, where if I were presiding, by unanimous consent. Let's bring in another voice to our discussion, and I look and see her, not appropriate, she's screen left, but I know she's got a right perspective. D.C. McAllister of The Federalist. D.C., welcome to our little discussion here. Your take on, for lack of a better term, a Trump-centric campaign, yet again a Trump-centric debate, as witnessed in that exchange right there between Jake Tapper and the front runner.
Well, I want to pick up on the theme you were talking about before, with him being the outsider, that who's really an establishment guy, and why people are buying that, because they say they want an outsider, but he's really establishment. He's really like the hacker that companies hire. He really knows everything, and he just says he's going to use it to actually turn back on the system. And so people just believe him, and they say, you've had experience, you know what you're doing, and they're rallying to him because they trust him. Even though he has played the game, they think he knows it well enough to turn the tables on everyone. So they trust him, and he stayed consistent in his message. He stayed consistent in his message tonight, and that really goes a long way with voters.
You know, I like the way you're explaining it, D.C., because in the old days we talk about folks in politics becoming, quote, political hacks, but you put it in the realm of the internet and the value of a hacker, someone who's been there and done that and understands how to make it work for other people. I hope our staff can get to an example of this on H-1B visas, where Mr. Trump is kind of confessional tonight on the fact that he's utilized those H-1B visas to bring from overseas and bring in workers, because, again, it is part of that phenomenon. Let's watch Trump, the hacker, if you will, tonight on H-1B visas.
Nobody knows the system better than me. I know the H-1B, I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me. I'm a businessman. These are laws, these are regulations, these are rules. We're allowed to do it. And frankly, because of the devaluations that other countries, their monetary devaluations that other countries are constantly doing and brilliantly doing against us, it's very, very hard for our companies in this country, to compete. So I will take advantage of it. They're the laws, but I'm the one that knows how to change it. Nobody else on this dais knows how to change it like I do, believe me.
I have the experience. I've utilized the visa, but I'll make the change. Julio Rivera, it has to trouble you a bit as a Ted Cruz supporter that Trump, and again to use DC's vernacular, as the hacker says, look, I understand the problem, I've benefited from it, but I'm going to make a change to it. Couple of minutes left. Your take on Trump as the hacker, if you will.
Yeah, but why should we trust him to make those changes? I mean, the people that are supporting him right now are people that are upset with politicians who have been making promises, on the campaign trail and not living up to them, when they actually get into office. So what guarantee do we have with Donald Trump? That's the reason why I'm a Ted Cruz supporter, because he said one thing on the campaign trail, he got to D.C. and he did exactly that. We have no idea with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been a liberal for the majority of his life. Just because he's been a conservative since June, I always tell people this, my birthday is in June, I'm a Gemini. I was born in June, but I wasn't born this past June. Why should we trust Donald Trump to make those changes?
Steve Malzberg, about a minute remains. I'm going to give you the last word in this portion of the broadcast. Trump, his newfound conservatism, his hacker cred, your take on his effectiveness tonight and beyond in the campaign.
Look, I think he's always admitted that he's used everything to his advantage. The filing for bankruptcy, because that's the law. He took advantage of it as a businessman, taking advantage of these workers, using his products made overseas as he can do. Because it's as a businessman, he'd be a fool not to. And as far as why shouldn't we trust him? Well, why shouldn't we trust him? I mean, again, he's an outsider. He's the only outsider. He also can beat Hillary, which is something that I think Ted Cruz is brilliant. I think he should be on the Supreme Court or whatever he wants to do, but he will never beat Hillary in a general election because he's not likable. That's just sad but true. Donald Trump can win. He's going to get the nomination, and he's going to appoint conservative justices to the Supreme Court, which is really what this election should be all about, almost only about.
And we will have to leave it right there. I know, Julio Rivera, you wanted to say more. We want to thank you, Julio, for your time. Steve, also for your time from Newsmax, New York, both of you. DC McAllister, hang in with us. And when we come back, Katrina Pearson, a national spokesperson for Donald Trump. Meantime, who do you think won the debate? Tell me by going to NewsmaxPolls.com.